One of the things that unsettled our students was that a young woman at the college posted something to the effect, I have to be careful here, I want to be as precise as I can, posted something that all of those who attended the bingo rally, about it at a bingo rally, in support of Israel were guaranteed a place in hell.
Mm-hmm.
So the students got upset. Chabad asked me to speak. I spoke. I did not anticipate, I don't think anybody anticipated that the young woman would be there. And she was there. She said that I had mischaracterized some of the things that she had said. We had a brief dialogue, and then I said to her, I cut to the bottom line, as they say, do you believe that those who attend a pro-Israeli rally are guaranteed should burn in hell? Those were my words, and she said, I do. And I went on with the lecture concerning October 7th. I went on with that.
Can you move out of the projector? We can't turn it on.
I'm sorry.
There you go.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's good. I'm sorry. So I went on with the lecture. The Vice President of Academic Affairs was there. She didn't say a word rebuking the student, and that was a problem. So we went on, and that was it. About 2 weeks later, a little bit after 2 weeks later, the president of the college sent a letter to the students, to everybody connected with the college. And he said he condemned anti-Semitism, and then lower down he said, we do not condone, I guess, this is not verbatim, but this is what he said, we do not condone the behavior of the student, nor do we condone the behavior of the member of the faculty who said something to the student. And, excuse me, people got very upset. I got upset. In the words of one of my students who walked out of the class, the student said to me, they threw you under the bus. And I think they did. They put me on the same level as the one who had propagated that statement. That was most unfortunate. Someone contacted the New York Post, and the Post contacted me, and I related what had happened. And then, there's something funny about this, there really is, funny and tragic at the same time. Fox News contacted me.
Oh, Jesus.
Fox News contacted me, and I got my 4 minutes. It was a very good interview. I mean, they gave me the time. But there are a number of things that are interesting about this. One is that there were a number of people, not at the college, who reached out to me and said, we support what you did, but why did you do it on Fox News? And my answer was, and it is to everybody else, is they were the ones that contacted me. Had CNN or MSNBC contacted me, I would have responded. Fox News did. I believe, I'm not sure of this I am not sure of, that the man who interviewed me, his daughter attends Union College. So, but that's what I have been told. So that's where it stood, and people got terribly upset. Now, as far as the college is concerned, we now have a faculty of almost 200 people. Not a single one sent me an email in support. No one sent me any derogatory emails, but no one sent me an email in support. In terms of faculty itself, I received three people came over to me, 2 in my department, gave me support, but not the rest of the department. Again, not saying anything against me, but having the support. Interestingly enough, and I got a kick out of this, it may come out the wrong, but it's not meant condescendingly, it is not. Someone working in the mailroom came over to me and gave me support, and a woman who works in the kitchen staff came over to me and gave me support. And I was both of them not Jewish people, and I was very, very appreciative of that. As far as the events are concerned of October 7th, I'm not sure I can tell you anything that you don't know, because the press has been very, very good on this. And I must say parenthetically, how could I say this without offending most of you? Is that of all of those cable stations, MSNBC, CNN, and Fox News, Fox has been the most supportive of Israel. There is no question about it. Even, let's say, I'll use the Yiddish, even for Brenta, anti-Fox people have to make that concession. It is very, very supportive. So, with that, what can I say? Again, what you all know, Israel was was really not devastated, but Israel was involved in a terrible campaign before October 7th over the proposed judicial reforms. And that, I think, led to some bad thinking on the part of the Israeli government. Moreover, a lot of the terrorism was coming from the West Bank, it wasn't coming from Gaza. The Israelis kept their eyes off the ball. In addition to that, there was something else. What the Israelis refer to in Hebrew, it's really from the English, the conception. It was a misconception, not the first time in the history of Israel. The Israelis thought they could manage evil, and that is, no Israeli in the government, whether it was a left-wing government, center or right-wing government, everybody understood that Hamas was bad, really bad. In the charter, the revision of the charter calling for the destruction of Israel, and the original charter calling upon Muslims everywhere to kill Jews everywhere. Everybody knew that. But there was a belief, again, I deal with this with the students, some of you may have heard me before. There are people, not only Marxists, who believe that economics determines politics. That is not true. It is politics that determines economics. And I would say this because here's the conception. The Israelis believe that if they allowed a certain number of people from the Palestinians from Gaza to work in Israel, they would make decent wages, they would enhance the living standards of their families, and the families are large, probably talking about 250,000 people, that this would work to the advantage of Gaza and work to the advantage of Israel. Because the misconception was that Hamas surely would not do anything to jeopardize the income of those 18,000 Palestinians. They wouldn't do it. Why would they do it? It was making life better for them. The Israelis were wrong. They were wrong in two ways. One, it didn't deter Hamas in the slightest. Politics determines economics. Hamas is hell-bent on the destruction of the state of Israel. The other thing, which of course is very, very scary, is that among the dead Hamas people, the terrorists, that were found on their bodies, were found detailed plans of those settlements in this, or those Israeli places in the southern part, near Gaza. When Israeli guards were changing, where specific locations were, that could only have been gotten by some of the people who came to work in Israel. So the misconception there was, I think, very, very, it was bad. For those of you who know the history of Israel, that's really not, it's not the first time. Probably more damaging than that was, of course, in the 73 war. And there I talk about, this is, in 73, it was an example of Israeli hubris. That is the belief after the Six-Day War of 1967, the Arabs have neither the capability, nor the ability, nor the courage, or the ingenuity to launch an attack upon the state of Israel. So the Israelis built up on their side of the Suez Canal what came to be known as the Bar-Lev line, and stationed well less than 1,000 Israeli soldiers in the Bar-Lev line, who were overwhelmed by 50,000 Egyptian soldiers when they really crossed over the canal in the early part of the Yom Kippur War. So you make mistakes. People make mistakes. That was a fundamental Israeli mistake. And another lesson here is, for all of the technology in the world, if you don't have what we would call now the boots on the ground, and if you don't have human intel, that is people who are dealing with Israeli intelligence people, dealing with people on in the Gaza Strip, all the technology in the world is not going to help you, and it didn't help the Israelis. The Israelis were caught literally and figuratively by surprise. Now, beyond that, what can I tell you? Here, the Israelis responded as I think everybody, any country in the world, including our own, would respond. Again, 1,200, 1,300 people, the women raped, the mutilation, of course, the kidnapping, the burning of people alive, all of those things that we all know about, all of those things, again, took place. No government in the world would have responded any differently. Should the Israelis now persist in what they are doing? You know, what can I tell you? The Talmud is right. It certainly in many ways and in this sense. Do not judge any people unless you have stood in their shoes. If I had people who were taken hostage, if I were an Israeli, I would be demonstrating out there and I would be calling upon the Israeli government, whether it's Netanyahu, Gantz, Gallant, any of them, make a ceasefire, get these people back, whatever the price you have to pay. But fortunately, I don't have any hostages there, and I can look at it a bit more objectively. I think Netanyahu, I'll put it this way, we're all friends here. Netanyahu is a bit sleazy. That may be an exaggeration or an understatement, depending upon your point of view. He is a very good politician. He is not a great politician. A great politician should have been able to cross the aisle and work with men like Lapid. That is, to form an alliance with the center, or maybe center slightly left. He was never able to do that. So we are now with an Israeli government that tends not to the right, but in some senses really tends to the far right. That presents a problem. But for all of the talk in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post, the fact of the matter is, most Israelis want to continue the war. They want to really end Hamas. Can you end Hamas? My wife says, they can't end Hamas. There'll always be Hamas. Well, there probably always will be Hamas. But Hamas, again, with individuals, people who are recruiting, people from outside is one thing. Hamas that has a base in Gaza, that's another thing. Anthony Blinken goes around telling people, and President Biden goes around telling people, we have a solution for the day after. The solution for the day after is a reformed Palestinian Authority. Many people, including myself, say that that's an oxymoron. That is a very corrupt organization. So, and then even if it was reformed, who is going to come into the Gaza Strip, either to rule it or to, let us say, build it up, rebuild it, if there are 4 battalions of Hamas that are left there? Nobody's going to invest in there, and any Arab is going to rule over the Gaza. With a strong Hamas presence, these men or women will be cut down within a matter of hours. So I understand the concern of the day after. I really, really do. And again, the Prime Minister Netanyahu has not spoken clearly about what what has to be done. I don't know if anybody knows what has to be done. So this is a very, very serious problem. Now, it has spread, of course, as we all know, to American university campuses. There, I think the issue is, I assume you all have, in one way, either you were students here or have a connection with Union. It's a world of difference here than for when you went here. One way it is the large presence of foreign students on the campus. When I came here as far as started teaching in September of 1967. I'll lighten this up for you. Don't take this. I'll lighten this up for you. There were no women on the campus. There were no women on the campus, and there were no foreign students on the campus, with 2 exceptions in 1970. Again, don't say. There were 2 beautiful blonde young women on the campus, and they were foreign students. Now, when I came here, I was 27 years old. I was a young Jew, now I'm an old Jew. And I was not much older than the students. And the students in the World War II history class, which I taught with Professor Hansen, some of you may remember him, a very gifted professor. I'm a little bit younger than he was. The students, it's an all-male institution, they would try to hit on these young women, and without success. And because I was not much older than they were, hey, Prof, how can we hit on these young women? Why don't they respond? What am I going to do? Now, I knew they were from Sweden, these very attractive young women, so I went to another gifted professor who was our specialist on Swedish history. Some of you may remember him. That's Professor Joe Board. Again, the chairman of the political science department, a very good man, a Rhodes Scholar and so on, who was married at the time to a Swedish woman. And he was a specialist on Sweden. And I say, Joe, what can I tell the boys? Why are they responding? You gotta help me out. And his response was, very interestingly, tell the boys it is their terrible bad piece of luck that of all of these beautiful young women who have come from Sweden, these two young women are Mormons. They will not look at anybody who is not a Mormon. So that was the end of that. But today there are there are a number of foreign students on the campus. I cannot prove this by survey. I cannot do it. But I think I am right in the anecdotal evidence that I give you. For many foreign students, there's an a priori, let's say, hostility, if that's not too strong a word, to the United States. They don't like the United States. They are here because our educational system is good, and the chances for social mobility are very great here if they stay here. But they have a built-in antipathy to the country. They believe we're an imperialist country. I am not saying all, I am not even saying most, I am saying some. And when it comes from students who come from the Middle East, every immigrant group brings with it the political, religious, and cultural baggage whence they come. And for students who come from the Middle East, the hostility towards Israel and towards Jews is absolutely tremendous. I had a student here who is from Pakistan, a religious boy, very nice young man, and believe it or not, sympathetic to the state of Israel. Not a strong supporter, but sympathetic. And very well connected in Pakistan. And he said to me, you have no idea of the anti-Semitism in Pakistan. You have absolutely no idea the words that are used to describe Israel and Jews and so on. So I think that's a component in what is happening on campuses all across the country. In addition to that, there is never, I'll paraphrase Plato. Plato said that only the dead have seen the last of war. Only dead Jews have seen the last of anti-Semitism. It is there, it was there, it will be there till the end of time. That's not a pessimistic statement. It is just what Robert Wistrich, the Israeli historian, used to call the longest hatred. It will always be there. What we have to worry about, knowing that it is always there, is that, thank God, in our country, it has not, with a few exceptions in terms of time, it has not been an impediment to our entrance into the American mainstream. And again, the only time that was the case, if you know your history, is in the 1920s and the 1930s, and there's a lesson there. It is when men and women of influence and affluence endorse anti-Semitism that we have a problem. And in the interwar period, you all know this, I hope, it's Henry Ford, it's Charles Lindbergh, and it's Father Coughlin. Anybody here from Detroit? Well, if you know, here, I'll lighten this up again. I do a lot of speaking, I used to do a lot of speaking in Detroit, and they take you to two places when you visit Detroit. I speak for the Federation, for the Jewish organizations. One is they take you to the restaurant, which was the last place that Jimmy Hoffa was seen alive. So they take you there. And then they take you, I think it's called the Church of the Holy Flower. That's where Father Coughlin, every Sunday night at the end of the 30s, spoke to him. He was the first radio priest, speaking to millions of Americans, talking to them about the Jew deal, and the Jews are responsible for this, and the Jews are responsible for that. So, the anti-Semitism is there. I suspect, I can't prove it, I don't want to disparage anybody. I think it's here on the part of some people in the faculty. I don't know, I can't prove it. I will not mention any names, but I think it's there. And I think it's there all across the country. Not in a very large proportion, but it is there. That's a factor. And then, what do we know? What's the statement? One picture is worth 1,000 words. You see the pictures of the destruction in Gaza. You see the dead bodies. You see the suffering of the people. If you've got a decent bone in your body, you have to be upset by this. And some people are terribly upset. They're genuinely upset, and that brings them out into the campus. They don't know the history. I must tell you, again, I'm not being condescending. What is true when you were here at Union is true now. And by that I mean our best students at Union are as good as anybody's. At the Ivies, at the Potted Ivy, like Williams and Amherst and Wesleyan, our best students here are as good as anybody's. But it's a very thin stratum, much thinner than at those schools. And our bottom is low. Our bottom is low. I'm sometimes astonished that we have some students like, I'm not being condescending. I'm just making a statement here. And either the high schools are not doing their job well, or maybe, well, whatever it is. I got into a discussion with, I don't know, this was in the World War II class, so 35 students in the class. And somehow we got on, I was talking about FDR and the fireside chats, and how whatever Jews have legitimately grievances against FDR, because he didn't really, let's say, eliminate the quotas of Jewish immigrants who wanted to come into the country. The man was a magnificent leader of our country. I'm not a political scientist. We have a good one here, Bob Basson here, who really knows his stuff. I don't think he would disagree with me that if you drew up a list of the 3 greatest American presidents, it's got to be Washington and Lincoln and Roosevelt, FDR. A magnificent leader during the Depression and a magnificent war leader. And somehow we got on to John Kennedy. And I made the statement that Kennedy was a good orator, not as good as Obama, but a good orator. But Kennedy had the advantage of having the best speechwriter in American history. Sorensen.
Oh, Sorensen.
Now, I don't know what Sorensen, if he told him that, but one of the nicest, the best things, in terms of a quip that Kennedy ever gave, Kennedy was the first American president to invite Nobel Prize winners and their spouses to the White House. And he got up and said, it's a great statement. He said something to this effect: ladies and gentlemen, this is the greatest assemblage of intellect that ever appeared at the White House, with the exception of the time that Thomas Jefferson dined alone. Nobody in the class laughed. And then I said, do you know who Thomas Jefferson was? One student raised his hand and said, he had something to do with the Constitution, right? And I said to them what I said to some of you on occasion: you're going to put a good man on the ground. So, some of the young men and women who are protesting, some of the young men and women who are protesting really don't know the history. It's an exaggeration to say, but I'm not sure it's much of an exaggeration, that if I ask some of these people who are screaming out a free Palestine from the river to the sea, I'm not sure that many of them would not say, the river, the Hudson, or the Mississippi. People don't know history. They just don't know the history. And the other issue is faculty. Faculty tend to move to the left. I can't quantify that, but I see it. I see it in Union, and I see it all around. And some faculty are espousing ideas that Israel is a white colonial state. Israel displaced, Israel harasses, and therefore, any opposition to Israel, whatever form that opposition takes, is justified. That's a problem too. And then we go back to administrators. Administrators, President Harris did not act well here by that letter that he sent out. I went over that with you. But fortunately, we have not had any, let's say, more disruptive elements on the campus, or incidents on the campus. But in other institutions, 2 of which where I went to school, Columbia and Penn, there the presidents did not act well. They should have laid down the guidelines very, very carefully. It is always, as you well know, it's a cliche already, this issue between free speech and the right to what you can do and what you can't do. I lean on the idea of free speech. I would even not oppose, I would oppose ethically this idea when you see people say, we support Hamas or something like that. How can you support Hamas? Hamas raped and killed and did all those terrible things. But you know what? For the sake of free speech, I would tend even to allow that. Even again, a free Palestine from the river to the sea, that's genocidal. I know that. But again, you don't want to cross that line. But the line that you can, for sure you cannot cross, is intimidation, physical assault, incendiary language, and things like that. The blocking of students from entering class, the seizure and destruction of property, that cannot be tolerated. And there the presidents were not on the mark. I would also tell you, I hesitate to say this, because my mother was a good woman, and she and my teachers, I was blessed by good teachers. I'm from the golden land of Brooklyn at a time when public education was very, very good. And what did our teachers, they wouldn't tell it to the girls, they would tell it to the boys, because the boys were more rambunctious. Now you may have heard it too when you were younger. Sticks and stones can break my bones, but words can never harm me. So if someone says something to you, don't punch them in the mouth or something like that. That's not correct. We know that words can harm. We know that when a kid, or not a kid, a young man at Columbia says that I could kill all the Zionists or something like that, that's bad stuff. It really is bad stuff. It can lead to violence. So it is always a difficult thing in dealing with this issue of free speech. Beyond that, I think we will endure. It is a tough time. Some people say it's like Nazi Germany. It's not like Nazi Germany. It's all historical analogies are flawed, including the one I'm going to give you. It's not Nazi Germany in the 30s. It's Poland at the end of the 1930s, where there was a quota on Jewish students and where Jewish students were forced to sit in a separate row, that's what they called the ghetto bench, and where Jewish students were physically assaulted. So that's not, it's not as bad as it was in Poland, but certainly it's not Nazi Germany. So what are we supposed to do about all of this? One, I would suggest you call out any politician. That's what I meant when I said in the early part of this talk. And that was, again, we cannot tolerate anybody who is ambivalent or ambiguous on the issue of anti-Semitism. You gotta come out strongly against it. And I must tell you, I voted for him, but I was terribly disappointed in President Obama. He made one statement after October 7th, and that was it. This is a man who should be condemning anti-Semitism in general, and especially again, no general statement here, but on occasion there has become anti-Semitism from the African American community. That people should speak out against this. Now, I don't want to get into politics here. I don't want anybody to say I'm biased against the African American community. One of our strongest supporters is the leader of the Democrats who's a black man, Hakeem Jeffries, who has always been supportive of the state of Israel. And there's a time to speak out. And I think President Biden has not spoken out enough of it. Former President Trump spoke out, but again, there's always the question, every politician and every political figure, the question of motivation. So we don't want to get into that, but I'm telling you, for political figures, the so-called influences, we cannot tolerate ambiguity or silence. They have to come out strongly. Also, in terms of, let us say, administrators. We have to demand of administrators that take a strong position against intimidation. There is a certain amount of Islamophobia, there is no question, and that should not be tolerated. No discrimination, no harsh against any ethnic or religious group. But the fact of the matter is, when you couple always anti-Semitism with Islamophobia, the fact of the matter is, it's the Jews are under the gun at the universities, not Muslims under the gun. So when you link them together, you're really diluting the anti-Semitism that is taking place. And then, should we use our money? And the answer is yes. If an institution, now I'm going to say something to my mother, may she rest in peace. She always told me when I began to do fundraising for various organizations, Stephen, she used to tell me, don't tell people how to spend their money. But I do now. This is the most difficult time for Jews and for the state of Israel, really since 1948. Since 1948, this is the most, we are under siege. Israel is under siege, and so to a certain extent is the American Jewish community. Forgive me for saying, you can reject what I say, you can question what I say. This is not a time, or I'll put it another way, in a positive way. Every Jewish philanthropic dollar should go to Israel, to Jewish organizations, such as AIPAC, such as whatever organizations you are in, whether it's Hadassah or anything else. This is not the time. Forgive me for saying it, it is not the time to give money to colleges and universities, museums, symphonies, and orchestras. We are under the gun here. We are really under the gun. I understand, we all give money. We are very charitable people. We all give money to various organizations. If we do not take care of ourselves, believe me, no one else will take care of us. So, with that, I say to you, because I teach a large class on the Holocaust that some of you may have taken, I will tell the students, and as I've told other Jewish groups where I speak, a lot of my references are to the Holocaust. I'm not obsessed with the Holocaust. Some people think I am, but I'm not. I tell the students, and I'm telling you, about one of the great heroes or heroines of the Holocaust. This is a woman that very few people know about. Some people know the Holocaust, know about the incident. On October 7th of 1944, there was a revolt in Auschwitz and Birkenau. Has anybody been to Auschwitz here? All right. Birkenau is the killing field. That's Auschwitz too. On October 7th of 1944, there was a revolt. The only revolt in Auschwitz carried out by the Sonderkommandos. These were Jews who worked in the gas chambers, doing the work of the Germans. Every Sonderkommando group was killed every 90 days. The Germans didn't want any witnesses around. On October 7th, there was a revolt at crematorium number 5. The Sonderkommandos destroyed the crematorium. The revolt spread to the other crematorium. They all are dead. They're all killed. They are able to do what they did, blowing up, because a group of women, Jewish women working in a factory, got explosives and smuggled it into the Sonderkommandos. They were all caught, horribly tortured, and executed. One of the leaders of the women was a young woman by the name, actually not the age of our students, a young woman by the name of Rosa Rabata, horribly tortured. Eventually, she was hung. And from the underground, the Jewish underground, they were petrified that under torture she named names. One guy gets in there and says, Rosa, did you give them any names? And she said, no, I gave them nothing. And then she said, you tell them. And these are the words that I tell the students and I tell other people. You tell them, she used a Hebrew expression, chazak v'amatz, be strong and courageous. And that's what I'm telling you. Do not be afraid. This is the greatest country in the world. We are free and equal citizens with everybody else. We have the right to stand up, and our cause is just. Israel is right. If you have any, I'll put it another way. If there's any doubt of what Israel has meant to the Jewish people, let me tell you, succinctly as humanly possible, it is the ultimate place of refuge for our people. 200,000 Moroccan Jews, 1 million Soviet Jews, 100,000 Ethiopian Jews, every Jewish man, woman, and child that wants to go there can be there. It is a technological hub. It's Silicon Valley East. And it is, I'll use the more elegant political science language, Israel gives the Jewish people agency. That is, we are able to determine to a certain extent our future. Mid-1943, 300 Orthodox rabbis go to the White House to plead with Franklin Delano Roosevelt to do something for the Jews in German-occupied Europe, more than was being done. They never get to see Roosevelt, never. That's Jewish powerlessness. One of the things I do is I lead Jewish heritage trips. I've been to Auschwitz 100 times. And I go to Warsaw. And in Warsaw, there's a memorial to a good guy. Did a bad thing, but he was a good guy. This is a man named Shmuel Ziegelbräu, smuggled out by the Polish underground to plead the cause of Jews and Poles in German-occupied Poland. He hears his wife and children have gone up the chimney. He commits suicide. That's the bad thing, he commits suicide. But he writes a letter, an open letter. Perhaps by this terrible act, I can get the world to focus attention and save the last Jews of Poland. The last Jews of Poland were not saved. That's what Jewish powerlessness is all about. That's when there was no state of Israel. Then, for those of you who know Schenectady, there's a restaurant, Hogan's. There I am with my wife and another couple. We're having a nice dinner, and the waiter comes up. They're watching. Do you hear what happened? It was July 4th, 1976. Israeli soldiers landed in Israeli planes at the Entebbe airport and rescued Jewish captives. That's what the state of Israel means. So, to use the Hebrew expression again, but a different one, if we remain stalwart in defense of our people and in defense of Israel, the Israeli would say, Yetov. In the end, it will be good for all of us. So thank you very much. I'm open. Let it rip. I'll even